Hello everyone. The video you're about to watch was filmed at 5:30 in the morning today, Friday, the day before this video is actually coming out, and it was basically immediately after I had woken up. So I'm going to be even more incoherent than usual. Any attempts at humor, snarkiness, or really anything are going to fall horribly flat, so just to give you a little bit of warning in that regard, and that being said, let's begin the episode. I'm PapaKenn and welcome to episode 73 of Discovering Doctor Who. Just so you know, from here on, I'm going to be referring to you all very lovingly as Kenvians. It's a name that was suggested by, who was it that suggested it? I believe it was Asim and, in the comments, and I honestly kind of fell in love with it, so yeah, I've actually been talking about that a little bit too long, but hello my Kenvians, I love you all. But yes, today is episode 73 of Discovering Doctor Who, and the episode I'm talking about is A Town Called Mercy, a very Western-styled episode that I did not expect from Doctor Who, but let's get right into it, talking about my favorite parts of this episode, starting with, by the way, completely plastic. This is like the only realistic-looking revolver I have been able to find anywhere in like a decade. Anyway, my first favorite part of the episode was Isaac. Also known as, well, the actor's name, Ben Browder, also known as, when I was growing up, John Crichton. And, I mean, the character Isaac was interesting, well done on his own. But just the fact that Ben Browder showed up in this episode when I don't think I've seen him in anything, at least personally, since Farscape, when he played John Crichton. And just seeing him show up was awesome to me. Like, I had a little fanboy moment, like, hee, Farscape! Which really makes me feel like I want to do a revisiting Farscape series at some point. I don't know when that'll actually happen, but yeah, I absolutely love the show Farscape, and John Crichton was, I mean, I loved so many characters on that show, but yeah, Ben Browder just did a great job in Farscape and as the character Isaac in this episode. I found him very believable as an old Western character, very just, you know, strong but gentle soul. Yeah, I really like the character overall, and again, just for the most part, Ben Browder in general. Alright, moving on to my second favorite part of this episode, the Gunslinger. And I'm going to have more to talk about him a little bit later in the episode, but just in general, I found it to be a very intriguing character. At first, I just thought it was kind of ridiculous, and even now, it's like, okay, where did all of the Western get-up come from? Which I can only assume he probably acquired from the people he killed over time, or maybe not. If he was only hunting down the aliens, then I don't know where the costume came from, and if that's I don't know, that is kind of weird, but the character in and of itself, being a weapon created by, I always forget the guy's name, Kahler-Jex, to be a weapon to end a 9-year-long war, him along with many others, and all of a sudden, like, you know, something happens to him, and he rebels going against his very creators. Although it was just something that I found really intriguing, and the character as a whole, while not, I wouldn't exactly call him a three-dimensional character by any means, but yeah, I just found there to be a very interesting deepness to the character, or at least the situation as a whole, that can really reflect upon a lot of the different things that are going on in today's world. I mean, this was from 2012, so it's not that long ago, but still, I just found it, I found the character itself to almost sort of be a commentary on modern times, I guess you could say. Alright, but moving on, my third favorite part of this episode was when when the Doctor acts tough. And it's when they first get to Mercy, and just like, you know, he's pretending to be like he's in a Western, and the crowning moment for me was when he put a toothpick in his mouth, and he starts to kind of try to flip it over, and then it gets caught in his mouth. that was just comedy gold to me. I was cracking up when that was going on. I actually had to rewind the scene so I could make sure I didn't miss anything. But yeah, that was really cool. It was nothing really significant, but just the scene where the Doctor is trying to act tough. Not referring to specifically later in the episode when he's the sheriff or the marshal or whatever. And, you know, he stands up to the entire town. That was a really cool scene, but just when he's trying to act tough and, you know, pretending like he's in a Western, basically, absolutely love that. Now, moving on, my fourth favorite part of this episode, a horse named Susan. I was going to make it a horse named Sue, but that's not entirely accurate. But yes, a horse named Susan. And including the quote from the Doctor when he talks to the preacher, when the preacher tells him that the horse's name is Joseph, I think it was, and the Doctor says, "I speak horse. He's called Susan, and he wants you to respect his life choices." That came very close to being like one of the quotes of the episode. But I decided against it because I just wanted to make that particular part one of my favorite parts of this episode in general. So yeah, a horse named Susan. Just love that. Now finally, my fifth and final, I already said finally once, but anyway, my fifth favorite part of this episode was the Doctor's Conundrum. And this is definitely the most deep-reaching aspect of the episode for me, one of my, as far as being one of my favorite parts, and that is the Doctor, when he finds out the truth about Kahler-Jex, this was one of, in my opinion, Matt Smith's strongest performances, other than, like, you know, when he gives this huge monologue speech, but when he, when he does that in the past, but where he was fighting back and forth between just throwing Kahler-Jex to the wolves, or to the Gunslinger in this case, and, you know, he's torn. It's like, well, actually, I'm going to be referring to that more when I get to the quote of the episode, but just this idea of, do his usual tactics, do they work in reality? It's like, with his negotiations, do they serve a greater purpose, or would it serve a greater purpose to just make sure that justice, that justice is done, that the person that did all these horrible, horrible things, murdered so many people, trying to make these great, powerful weapons to end a war, that one of his creations should be able to do him in, to seek his own revenge. And it's just, I don't know, maybe some people have a more narrow thought on it, but I can definitely see the dilemma there, especially if, as Amy says, that the Doctor's been alone too long, and he's just not convinced anymore that his usual tactics are the best way to go. I just absolutely love the idea that, you know, not only is the Doctor, you know, sort of stuck in the middle, but it's a truly hard decision for him to make, or that, like Isaac says, you know, he's a good man, he just sometimes forgets it. And let's face it, all of us are, I personally believe that everyone is intrinsically good, but sometimes we're bad people. And sometimes, I believe that sometimes situations call for you to be a bad person. I don't know, maybe it's a little bit too early for me to be thinking completely straight on that. I am actually recording this before I've had my coffee, so maybe I just sound like a complete idiot. I don't know, but that's the end of my favorite parts of this episode. It's time to talk about my annoyances with the episode. And there's actually two. The first of which is Kahler-Jex's sudden change of heart just before he sacrifices himself. And it's written in a way that is kind of believable, but at the same time, Kahler-Jex gives us no indication that he doesn't want to, like, you know, survive at all costs up until, like, literally seconds before he actually sacrifices himself. It's like, you know, there was no show of, what if I'm wrong? In the entire, you know, scenes leading up to that, like when he's in the jail cell and he's talking to the Doctor. I don't know, maybe I missed it, or maybe you all caught on to it better than I did, but I just did not see any indication that he was going to, you know, face his demons, that he was going to, you know, sacrifice himself in the end. I mean, I guess sort of like the plot made it kind of obvious that that was going to happen, because it was a fairly simple plot, but yeah, I don't know, just the sudden change of heart, or for me, the seemingly sudden change of heart, just wasn't totally believable, and it honestly irked me a little bit. I was just kind of like, oh, okay, well, you know, I expected this to happen, but they gave no indication that he was actually going to. What a twist, I guess. But alright, my second annoyance with this episode... Okay, this is the Old West in America. And there are a lot of people there with guns. You're going to tell me that not a single person in that entire town with all of their guns, not a single person took a shot at the Gunslinger. Especially considering it takes him apparently like 5 to 10 seconds to charge a single shot. Because let's face it, handguns shoot quite fast. I mean, yes, there is the chance of them backfiring, especially back in the day, I suppose. But all it would take was like the entire town to gang up on this gunslinger. I mean, yes, there's a chance that a few of them could die, but in the Old West, I mean, at least, and I could be completely inaccurate in saying this, but historically speaking, not many people were afraid to die in the American Old West. Again, I mean, you know, I'm sure it was completely different, like, you know, in actuality, but if we're, you know, the way that the Old West was portrayed is like, you know, it was kill or be killed. So, I don't know, I don't understand why they would think that not a single person in that entire town, every single one of them with guns, chances are the women and the children all have guns, would not take a shot at this gunslinger. I mean, maybe they did and they just didn't mention it, or I forgot they mentioned it. And, you know, they said that the gunslinger was impervious to bullets. I don't remember anyone saying that, but if that's the case, that's one thing. However, I can't get it out of my mind. It's easily the biggest annoyance for me in this entire episode that not a single person, it's like not a single person takes a shot at the gunslinger. Again, it was just really annoying to me. But moving on from there, time to put the guns down. Let's talk about my track of the episode. And this one was actually a bit tough because I felt like pretty much all of the songs fit the mood quite well. They were all songs that I thought would fit into a Western, essentially. I felt like the episode did a pretty good job of mixing the sci-fi with the Western aspect, as did the music. And the one that really stood out to me the most was the Salvation of Kahler-Jex. Now, even though, you know, the actual salvation, the change of heart, didn't sit well with me, the song, or rather the track, was really well done, and it's easily the one that stood out the most to me because it's the most dynamic by far, and yeah, I just really liked it. If there were any other tracks in this episode that you all like, please do let me know, because again, that was the one that just stood out to me the most while I was listening through. Now, as for my quotes, okay, only one quote, I'm sorry. My quote of the episode, it is from the Doctor, and it's when Amy confronts him about, you know, sending Kahler-Jex to be killed, or putting him over the line so that the gunslinger could kill him, initially. And the quote is this, and it was just really powerful and really made me think a lot. Okay, the Doctor says, "But they keep coming back, don't you see? Every time I negotiate, every time I try to understand. Well, not today. No, today I honor the victims first. His, the Masters, the Daleks, all the people who died because of my mercy." And it's just such a, in my opinion, such a powerful quote, because it's really intriguing to think about. You know, yes, the Doctor always, well, most of the time, tries to take the peaceful route, especially in some of the older episodes, not so much the newer episodes, but they always try to work things out rather than having to completely resort to violence. And how many of those have resulted in more deaths? I mean, letting the Daleks survive, or when the Daleks don't completely get wiped out. The Cybermen, it's like, you know, every time the Doctor tries to just smooth things over, and inevitably someone ends up dying. Not all the time, maybe, but most of the time that's the case. So yeah, just, that quote by itself. Now, you could throw in Amy's quote afterward as well, referring to the Doctor being alone too long. But just that quote from the Doctor himself, I absolutely love it. I think it's a really intriguing and thought-provoking quote, again, from my perspective. Alright, now, as for my overall thoughts on this episode, I liked it. It's, of the episodes so far in this season, it's definitely the most filler feeling. I'm sure the previous episode could be considered filler as well, from my perspective. But A Town Called Mercy is definitely the most just kind of, hey, this seems like a fun idea, and they rolled with it. But I don't know, I still liked it. It's not the most entertaining episode. It was definitely a fun little mix of Old West and sci-fi. Strangely, in a much better way than Cowboys and Aliens, which I did see that movie a while back, and it was okay. It was enjoyable, it was entertaining, but yeah, just in a way I found this to be a more solid mix of the two, because it actually incorporated real Western themes into the sci-fi aspect. But yeah, the just I need my coffee. Overall, it's an okay episode, not the best, but it was enjoyable at the very least. Now, alright, time for my question of the episode, and it is this. With that very last scene, with a little girl looking up and seeing the gunslinger up atop the mountain, which I thought was... that entire scene, especially... Well, I got this feeling before that as well, but just in that particular scene, did anyone else get a Robocop vibe? I mean, even the voice of the gunslinger felt like it was Robocop. The way the face was kind of altered reminded me of the way that Robocop's face looks when his face mask isn't on. I'm talking about the classic Robocop as well, not the newer movie, which I actually never saw. But yeah, did anyone else get that vibe? It had a very rogue Robocop type feel. Again, maybe it's just me and me being up before my coffee, but that's just the way I felt about it. Alright, so I just really quick forgot about the prequel for this episode, which is called The Making of the Gunslinger. And yeah, I know that these were made apparently for the American audience, and as usual, I'm glad I didn't watch that before the actual episode, because it would have ruined one of the main reveals. Again, it's like I don't feel that the episode was overall that strong, but still, like, the prequel just kind of seems to ruin a particular aspect of the episode. So I'm glad I watched it afterward, but as a whole, the prequel is pretty unnecessary. I don't actually know where I'm going to put this within the actual Discovering Doctor Who video, so yeah. Anyway, later. Now, moving on, the next episode is going to be The Power of Three, which I have already watched, so I'll hopefully be recording an episode for that very soon. Little spoiler, I feel like the name could have been different, but I'll refer to that next time in the next episode of Discovering Doctor Who. Now, before I sign out, everyone, I want to share with you a little bit of fan art that I got from one of the commenters over on Facebook. It's from Stallchild. And I don't know, I just absolutely loved these little modifications he made. I consider it fan art anyway, because I just feel like the little images he made were a lot of fun and they really made me laugh. So Stallchild, thank you very, very much. And obviously I'm using his, not his real name unless he says I can. But yeah, thank you very much for those. I really love these, and if anyone else were to make some at some point in the future, I would find that absolutely flattering, but I sound like I'm actually basically asking people to do that. I'm not doing that, but I just found it to be really flattering and really cool in my opinion. But anyway, I am blabbering and I need to get some coffee. Everyone, thank you very much for joining me for episode 73 of Discovering Doctor Who, and I will see you next time with my Sonic. Oh, it's way too early. Anyway, everyone, see you next time. Alonzi!